Today on Ramblings with Rebecca, Customary International Law. We're continuing our series on the basics and the sources of international law as a whole. Today we come to my favorite. Probably my favorite because it is the most vague, the most debatable, the most unwritten, and therefore the most fun to delve into. Customary international law, generally speaking, that part of international law that comes from what states tend to do because they feel legally obliged to do so. So this does not come from explicitly written down treaties and that kind of thing, or, and some kind of contract. It's just this nebulous body. And it's thus confusing, and thus also people tend to claim something is customary international law if they want it to be, and refute that it is if they don't want it to be, of course. So this is one of those things that gets tossed around in courts a bit in international law, but is easily refutable, right? I mean, because you can get very, very renowned lawyers to say absolutely yes or absolutely no about whether or not something is customary international law, since it's not codified. Okay, so customary international law, two main criteria. One, state practice. Customary international law comes from the customs, that states do. Widespread conventions that virtually all states are acting by. Number two criteria is opinio juris, the belief by states that they're doing that because they are legally obligated to do so. Just because all states do something does not automatically make it a legal thing. To shamelessly steal an example from one of my instructors, when foreign dignitaries come to visit, we throw out the red carpet. This is a widespread state custom. This is not, however, customary international law. States don't do that because they feel legally obliged to do so, right? Like, the president is not going to get thrown into jail if he doesn't roll out the red carpet or paint the White House white enough or whatever. So it's this combination of the two that actually creates customary international law. The opinion of states about why they do what they are doing. States need to feel that they have a legal obligation to be doing the customs. And generally speaking, the evidence is the same for the both. Some scholars like to completely separate the criteria and look through each. Yes, okay, so customary international law, then vague, nebulous, as I said. State practice has to be virtually extensive, but not literally universal, and uniform. So states have to be doing pretty much the same thing, or, be acting under the same principles in order for it to be customary international law. And changing customary international law is very tricky, right? Because it involves all states shifting their customs at the same time, or, to have shifted their policies, over long enough, and their, what they see as their legal obligations, that, there's a total change in world custom. That's going to take a while, and it's hard to point to exactly when that happens. One of the classic examples was around oil shelf drilling away from the coast, and I'm not using very good terminology here, I'm sorry. But 1940s, Truman Proclamation says that the continental shelf, there we go, there's the good vocabulary, is U.S. territory, including what's in it, aka we can get, to technology, oil, minerals, and such that are, in our oceans surrounding us. It's a very big departure from what states had done previously. If the rest of the world, because this was just a policy statement, right? Truman says, okay, yep, this is all U.S. territory, I own this is ours. If all the rest of the world had turned around and said, no, that's not yours, the U.S., being America, probably would have done it, but it would have been in violation of a lot of international law. Instead, other countries said, ooh, that's a great idea, and all made similar proclamations. So there's become this move from freedom to coastal shelf jurisdiction and ownership. When exactly that happened isn't super clear, but then it did explicitly happen later on. However, there was a shift in customary international law there. But it required, one big player kind of making a statement and no one else objecting. You can be a persistent objector to customary international law. If everyone else is accepting it, it's going to become customary international law. If you say, kind of from the outset, nope, this is not okay, I don't consider this a legal obligation, and you're consistent about that, you're good. Passive acquiescence, or just not saying anything, is not going to help, and it's going to further the cause that something does become customary international law. So like I said, lots of scholars debate specific around But we'll probably get a bit more into this with both environmental law and human rights law, since a lot of their stuff is customary.